Welcome to this session. I'm going to help you out with Citrix on this session. I'm going to try to explain how to install and configure some settings and also some navigation within Citrix when you use Excel. My understanding is that some of you are experiencing some difficulties with the power tools within the Excel application. And so to circumvent the problem, you may use Citrix as your tool of choice to access Excel and its power tools. So I have mine installed already on my Mac. So this is for Mac users, but it can also help PC users. PC users can do the same thing. Install the Citrix application from the Citrix website. So this is the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to take you to the Citrix server, and the URL is, I'm going to type it here. I hope you can see it in my little display window that gives me details or shows you details of what I'm doing with my cursor. So my cursor is pointing to the URL, and it comes up as citrix.nait.ca. You don't have to worry about what follows. It says /VPN index.html. Just type citrix.nait.ca. That should be good enough to access the site that you need to be in. It takes you to a login screen which asks you for the Nait credentials, and that's your student username. Mine is a staff one, so I'm going to use mine and type in my regular password. The one that you use for Moodle is the same one here. So I'm going to type mine here and hopefully be able to log in past this screen. I'm going to type log on. It will ask you if you want to save the password on this website. You probably, I never do that just for security reasons. Now the next thing you need to be aware of is that you need to work with the receiver. So let the web page detect the receiver for you, and it will detect it if you have it installed or not. If you not installed, then do proceed to install it. It is a safe website. It is a safe download. There's no need to block it for some reason. So also on this site there is a light version. We would be tempted to use it, but the light version does not provide all the features that you need, especially when it comes to navigation and saving files on your own devices. So ignore the use light version unless you're in a hurry, but be aware that that doesn't really work and doesn't provide all the features. So I'm going to say detect the receiver for now. I do know that I already have it, and so I'm not going to proceed to install it again, but if you do, then do proceed to install your version of the receiver on your machine. Here I'm going to agree and then download, and then I'm going to show and switch to the receiver itself. So that's the first step you need to do: install the receiver and agree to the licensing agreements and so on. So that's typically what we do. Next, what I'm going to show you is a typical Mac installation of the receiver. So for that, I'm going to go to the launch pad, which is this little icon here with a rocket. And in the launch pad, you may have several pages. So at the bottom of the page, you may have buttons. And once you have installed the receiver, it will look like a black and white icon, which is labeled Citrix Receiver. So launch that, and it'll bring up this screen here, right? If it doesn't, or if it asks you for add an account, when it asks you for adding an account, simply type citrix.nait.ca. The next thing it will ask you is to log in as your with your credentials, and so you do so, and you should end up here on this screen with several applications, including Excel. So we're interested in Excel. If you don't see the same ones that I do, that's because, well, I'm an instructor. I have access to more applications that you do, but you should have at least Word, PowerPoint, and Excel on this listing along with others. You may also have an Internet Explorer version 11, which may be helpful in some instances. I'm not going to go that into details here on that particular one. I'm going to concentrate on the setup of the receiver and this particular window. So at the top here, the title bar, it says Citrix Receiver. I have my favorites, I have my apps, which is basically the same listing in a different view, and that's okay. You can keep working on that. You also have the Excel. We're not going to go into Excel right away. First, I want to show you some settings that you need to check before you go in further. So the next thing I want to do is go to the tab where the preferences are, or the menu where the preferences are, so I can show you what preferences and what settings you need to have. On a Mac, again, on a Mac, and you should see on PC the same preferences available, maybe not in the same interface, but you should be able to see a general tab, and so make sure that you have all these check marks correct or added to your account. The accounts, you should have a primary account, which is the Nait account. Don't add any more, you just need the one. And in the file access, this is the most important one that I want to point out. The file access section of the preferences, you will get to choose how to access files and drives on your computer from your applications. This is very, very important. If you need to save files to your own devices, then you do need to make sure that this setting is permanent to read and write. You need to select that. The default may be, when you first install the receiver, as a read-only for security reasons. But again, we're working with a safe environment. It's Nait's environment. It provides virus-free software, and this is one of them. So make sure that in here you are okay with the read and write. If it is on read-only, come back to change it. If you encounter problems saving files, the system will prompt you and will say you can't do this because you need administrator rights. This is the issue. You may need to come back here and change it and log in, maybe log in back again. So always check a couple of times before you start the preferences. So I have it as read and write. I'm okay with that. Now I can proceed to navigate or use the applications. Now, for Excel, I have here an Excel application that will start. It may be slow, so be patient. It is a powerful environment. It's a virtual environment, and it is providing you with the PC version of Excel on a Mac. If you don't have a Mac, you are having issues with Excel where you can find options, then this environment pretends to be another PC within your PC. That's all you need to know technically in layman's terms. So what you'll see is a selection of templates, just like you do when you first start Excel, and you can start an application or a workbook like this. Here's my brand new workbook. It's not saved yet, and that probably is the next thing you need to know and learn about this environment, is how to save files on your own devices using Citrix. Now, let's get to this. This is the other important, challenging part. When you open a file, whether it's a SAM file or one of your own, you open it from your PC and you want to browse your PC. So in the file or in the backstage of Excel, you browse for the files. This is where it gets challenging. You'll need to learn how to navigate this environment. I'm going to move my window a little bit because it's in the way here. So here, I've got my PC, and you will see at the top, Quick Access Desktop. Now, you need to understand that the desktop, the default desktop, is a desktop that is not your own device. It's something else. It's a device made available by Nait on the cloud, on a separate computer. So this desktop here, if you're trying to save things to this particular desktop, this is files that are stored on a computer somewhere else, not my own device. So I'm going to ignore that for now because I may not need it, and it may not be the easiest way to work with. So what I want to do is really focus on this PC, which is normally my machine. This PC can expand like this by clicking on the side and get you to other desktops. Now again, this PC desktop is the first desktop you see under this PC is a desktop on the cloud. Your own device will be listed like this: local disk C on Nelson's iMac. I'm using an iMac. You may be using a PC, but you will see local disk C : on your name, and whatever device you're using. From there, you should be able to navigate your own device. So this is your own device, and in my case, I've got an iMac, and that's okay. On my iMac, I have users. And maybe you have more than one, and that's okay. But most of the time, you'll have just one user, and you'll see that they are listed. There's a guest, there's an Nelson C, that's me, and then there's a shared. I'm not sharing with anyone, but I also have another person here, Sylvie, that was created as a guest or as a user on my iMac. Now, I'm going to navigate to my own, and you should do the same on your own device. You should see your own account name and navigate further. So I'll keep expanding until I see another desktop. You see that under my own name, I have a desktop. This is my local desktop. This is where I can see my files on my own device all the time. Okay, so this is where I want to either open files from or save them to. Open files from or save them to. This is the local device. This is the best way to keep your own files on your own. If you're used to use a Mac and don't bother changing those files around or moving those files around, most of the time when you download a file, it goes directly into a downloads folder. So here it is. This is my own device. It's again under Nelson account, and it's not on the desktop, but it's on the downloads. And you see that here I prepared a file or a bunch of files that I downloaded earlier from Sam. Here's my chapter 4, for example. So this is a typical generic file that I get from Sam, and it opens up. It should have your name every time on the worksheet itself. So that's how you open files from a device or your own device. Now to save them, it's very simple. You go Save As, and you proceed to do the same exercise, the same gymnastics, where you make sure that you save to your own local disk. So again, local disk and users and your own name, and whether you want to put it on the desktop or keep saving a new copy or different copy on the downloads or on the documents, that's up to you. Me, I usually put my stuff on the desktop, so here I'm going to save this, and I'm going to slightly change the name of it to Nelson C. This would be my own copy, and I'm going to renumber it and then save it. Now it is on my desktop now. That's the device, that's the file that I have on my device. It happens that if you look at the right hand side of my desktop here on the desktop, I have a file that is a generic blank page icon, and that is indicating that yes, it is saved as an XLS, so in other words an Excel file, but it's not associating it with an icon, the typical Excel icon that I am used to see. And this is because in my particular case, I never installed Excel on my iMac. I always used it from the Citrix version. So if I want to open it now that it's on my device, I must go back to Citrix and say File, Open, and locate that file in my devices. So browse and go back to the original place where I saved this file on my machine. But I'm using it, I'm using Citrix or the Excel version on Citrix to locate and reopen that file. So that's one thing that you need to learn with the Citrix. It's a bit challenging, but it's the best solution we have available at this time to work with some of the additional add-ins and advanced features that Excel offers. The next thing I want to show you on this video is how to install and make sure that those PowerPivot tools are installed on your machine. We can see already some of those tools over here. Pivot Open 3D Maps. This is something that you're going to need in Chapter 8 of Excel. 3D Maps makes use of this. Pivot Charts also available. But before you start using those, you need to make sure that you look at the ribbons, and in the ribbons you need to have one that is called Developer and one that is called Pivot, PowerPivot. In my case here, I noticed they're not there. So all it takes is just a one-time installation, and I'm going to go to, again, back to the Backstage file right there, and then down in the options, I'm going to bring up this this Excel options window to work with the advanced features. So in the advanced tab, I'm going to scroll down all the way to the data section. The data section right here shows that I have some things enabled, and one of the things that I need to enable on the Citrix server version of Excel is the Enable Data Analysis add-ins, PowerPivot, PowerView, PowerMap. That's one thing I need to enable. I will click OK on this, and you'll see now that I have a PowerPivot ribbon right there. So that's one thing I need to do first before I start working on, I believe it's Chapter 8 or 9, where you need to use those tools. Now, one more thing. Go back to the file, to the Backstage, and back to the options, and this time go to the add-ins section. Instead of the advanced, go to the add-ins. In the add-ins, you will see a list of active application add-ins, and you should have the PowerPivot for Excel, the PowerPivot for the PowerView for Excel. If they're not there, then you need to manage them in the Manage section at the bottom of the same screen, in the COM add-ins. The COM add-in. This is Communications add-in. And then click on the Go tab. In the Go tab, you need to make sure that you have the Power Map for Excel and the Power Pivot for Excel and the Power View for Excel enabled. That's all. Just do that check. Click OK, and you should be fine with the rest of the material for chapter, for the last chapter that uses Power Pivot, Power Tables. So if you have any issues, let me know. Again, this is the Citrix version. if you have your own installation of Excel and you can't find these options, I strongly suggest that you use Citrix so that you don't have to come to Nait to do this. That's the other option you have if you're around Nait and you need to do that chapter. Nait computers have these options enabled, I believe, and you can access this. If they're not, then you can go into the backstage and actually go into the add-ins and the advanced options and verify that they're on. Other than that, verify that your version is the same as mine. I'll show you mine here on the system. To verify the version, you need to click on Account and About Excel, and it'll bring a version MSO 16.04549.100032-bit. That's the version, that's the current version that we're using. You should have the same if you downloaded the Excel application from your portal and installed it, installed the native version of Office products that were given to you as a Nait student. And that's all there is for this particular video. If you don't have the same version, if you have a version that you bought with your computer, then I suggest that you uninstall that version, install this version from the server, excuse me, from Nait server, and use this one. If you have an issue with that, then definitely use Citrix instead of your version, of your local version. Use Citrix to do that, and then all you have to do is just make sure that the data options in the advanced options of your Excel are enabled, as well as the COM options of your Citrix version are enabled. That's all I have, folks. I hope this helps. If you have an issue with the last chapter and the PowerPivot tools that are here, the measures and KPIs and the managing of the Power Windows, then send me a message. I'll try to help out.